I'm Katie. Welcome back to Making Waves. Today, we wanted to share with you some tips to save money on your next cruise and let you know how we saved several $100s on our last cruise. All right, tip number one to save money on your next cruise is to book a guaranteed cabin. So a guaranteed cabin is one where you don't get to choose the exact deck or the exact location of your cabin, but you just choose the category type. So for example, if you know you want a balcony stateroom, you can book a guaranteed balcony cabin. You won't know the cabin number until typically after you check in for your cruise, and the cruise line assigns that to you. Now, we do know some people who have booked guaranteed cabins and they've never been disappointed with their room, so that could be one strategy to save some money on your next cruise. The next tip to save money on your cruise is to consider booking during non-peak times. Now, non-peak can mean different things depending on the destination. So for example, the Caribbean non-peak times might be in the fall, which is, I know, often considered hurricane season, which sounds a little scary, but the cruise lines really monitor weather so well that they know how to kind of outrun and move around storms. So you can really realize some pretty nice savings by booking in the fall instead of spring and summer. And for us, we typically consider non-peak times to be any time that kids are in school. Now, we love kids, but we don't have any school-age children. And what we have found is that when school is out, so times like spring break, summer, fall break, holiday break around Christmas time, ships just tend to be busier. And so we prefer to book when kids are in school. That's just our preference. And so that can be one strategy to potentially save some money. You can also look at shoulder season. So shoulder season are kind of those times right before and after peak season. So for example, if you're looking to sail to Alaska, you might want to consider booking early in the season in May, or later in the season in September. Again, kids are back in schools, tends to be a little less crowded, and therefore the cruise lines will offer a few more discounts during those times. If these tips are helpful, I hope you'll consider subscribing. We'd love to have you join the Making Waves family. Tip number 3 is to consider looking for an upgrade once you board the ship. So you've already purchased your cruise, you've checked in, you have arrived at the terminal, and you've just got on board the ship. Go to the guest relations desk and see if they might have any upgraded cabins that are unsold. We have known people that this has worked for. We haven't tried it ourselves, although we do plan to do that on a future cruise. So for example, maybe you booked an inside cabin. Once you're on board, when you go to the guest relations desk, ask if they have any balcony cabins that are unsold. If they do have any, they will often offer those for a much discounted price over what you would have paid had you booked that originally. The next tip is the one that we utilized for our last cruise to save quite a bit of money. And that is, once we booked the cruise, we made sure we were on the email list for that particular cruise line. In our case, it was Celebrity. And cruise lines, including Celebrity, do pretty frequent promotions. And so if you're signed up on their email list, you'll get those emails. And so every time I saw a new promotion, I would go online and I would price out our exact cruise and cabin type. And if the price was lower, I called Celebrity and said, hey, the price is lower now than when we booked. And they gave us that discount. So in our case, and I'll put on the screen what we originally paid for our cruise. I think it was $4,700. And with the promotion, we saved $800. So that's a pretty good sized chunk of change. We also happen to have some future cruise credit that we thought had long expired. We had booked a cruise for 2020 to Alaska. course, we all know what happened in 2020 with the pandemic, so that cruise was canceled. They did end up extending, I know, the expiration date on those future cruise credits a couple of times, but at that point, it just wasn't the right time for us to sail, and so we thought we had really lost out on that money, and I think it was around $540 or $570. So they applied that credit as well, which really brought our price down. So really just continue to kind of watch those sales and promotions, reprice, contact the cruise line if your price goes down. There are websites too that can kind of help with this. I think cruisewatch.com is one that can really help you track prices as well. So we highly recommend that. If these tips are helpful, I hope you'll give this video a like. It really helps our channel out a lot and we truly appreciate it. All right, the next tip is to consider booking a repositioning cruise. A repositioning cruise is where a cruise ship is relocating at the end of one season in one location to another location. Those cruises are typically at least 2 weeks in length, and they do come with a lot of sea days because it's typically for example, a transatlantic type sailing. So you do need to be prepared for a lot of sea days, but they typically also have some pretty interesting port stops as well. This is something we are anxious to do at some point in the future. And as I was researching transatlantic cruises for this video, I found this amazing deal. It's not until 2025, but it's on Holland America, sailing from Barcelona, Spain to Fort Lauderdale, Florida in November of 2025. And the prices were amazing. It's a 15-night cruise. It's $899 per person for an inside cabin and $1,449 for a balcony cabin per person. That's an amazing price for a 15-night cruise. Now, of course, you do have to maybe counterbalance that a little bit with the cost of flights. You'll have more expensive flights if you're flying from the US. But that's still a pretty amazing deal. So that's definitely one tip we have to save some money. The last tip I wanted to share with you today is to consider booking last minute. Now, I am a planner. I love preparing for cruises and planning and researching those port cities. So we haven't taken advantage of last minute opportunities, but it is something I definitely want to be open to do in the future. Now, I do think this requires some flexibility on your part. So I would say look at cruises that are departing anytime, between 2 weeks from now and maybe 8 weeks out. And you might have to be flexible as to the cruise line, the specific cruise ship, maybe even cabin type. But cruise lines typically offer some pretty hefty discounts on any unsold cabins that are 8 weeks or less out from the sailing. So that's a really good tip to save some money as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope these tips were helpful. We truly appreciate your time. And until next time, happy cruising.